Okay, I'm going to start recording this so that the people that cannot make it into the trading room because I have it at 8 o'clock can actually watch the video. So I am recording this morning. And what I want to do is the same thing that we do every day, but I want to explain it in case there's some new people in the room that don't understand what I'm doing. The plus sign that is either above or below price, that is called the trend ATR indicator. And the plus sign specifically is what you hear me refer to as the ATR stop. And what we know is that the ATR on the higher time frames will act as support or resistance. Now the price bar is colored according to the ATR stop. So in this case the ATR is red, the price bars are red. If you hear me say we want to see the ATR flip, that means I want to see the ATR go from blue to red, or in this case it would be red to blue. Now in addition to the ATR built in, we also have a congestion dot that is built in, and what this does is it identifies what I consider mathematical noise. Okay, when you put in an ATR, you have to set some point that, okay, if it closes beyond this area, then the ATR has to change. Well, if it's by one tick, it meets the mathematical guideline, but it doesn't necessarily mean the trend has changed. Does everybody follow me so far? Now, to overcome the mathematical noise, we added a congestion dot. And what this tells me, and this is a great example, is that yes, it flipped the ATR. It went from from red to blue. It flipped it. Does that mean we're in an uptrend? No, it does not. I would want it to come up here and exceed this congestion dot in order for me to say, okay, this is an uptrend. Now, what you typically will find is that this will come up to the congestion dot. It will form divergence at the congestion dot. Then it will come back and it will test the ATR. Does everybody understand that? And that is built into the trend ATR. We also built in a gray bar, okay, and right here there are two gray bars. You can barely see them. It's just outlined in gray. Okay, the reason that we did that is because anytime we have an ADX magenta peak, and the ADX is this indicator here, a magenta peak is a pointed top that has a dot on it with pink bars underneath. Okay, we call that a magenta peak. In Ninja Trader, all subsequent peaks will be in yellow. The first peak, as you see over here, and let me modify this a minute so you can see it better. Okay, now you can see it better. This is the first magenta peak, and it has now had a second magenta peak. Even though the dot is yellow, you look down, you see there is magenta histogram bars. So this tells us that more than likely it will retrace back to the ATR. Well, we take all of our trades at the ATR, okay? And normally on a 3-minute chart we use within 5 ticks of the ATR is where we would take our trade. What about on a 720-minute? What's that magical number? Well, we didn't know what the magical number was, so we colored the bar gray anytime that it came close enough to the ATR, and it's based on a mathematical calculation. That way we don't have to give out magical numbers. If your bar turns gray, it's close enough. Okay? What do the dotted lines between the peaks mean? Divergence. Yes, technically there is divergence there, Jim. Now, this again, it goes into when you're using mathematical calculations. And this is going to happen anytime you're using a mathematical calculation. You have a low here and you have a lower low over here, okay? Then if you draw that same line from this dot to this dot here, you do have divergence there, and that's why the red dots are appearing. Would that be a strong divergence? No, it really would not be. If you want to see a strong divergence, let me see. Okay, don't worry about these lines. It's something else that I'm measuring. Okay, do you see from this high to this high? Do you see the divergence on that one, Jim? Now that to me is a very valid divergence. That's still building intra-bar. Okay, so to me that would be a significant divergence. Okay, whereas, and I mean that still has, you know, half a month before it finishes. This one is what I would call you need to squint to see it. In fact, if those red dots were not there, you would not see that at all, would be my bet. Does that clarify it for you? Is there divergence? Mathematically, yes, there is divergence there. Is it a strong divergence? I would say no. All right, in addition to the gray bar in the trend, we also have this magenta bar. The magenta bar tells us there was a significant movement, meaning it's at least 2.5 times of the average true range of the last 5 bars. Okay, so that's a significant bar, and they typically will retrace. Okay, so it's very important to know when you have this significant bar, because you wouldn't want to enter at the bottom of that typically, because it's going to go back up. Does everybody understand that? Now, one that I do not have plotted on my chart because I don't see a need for it, but I'll show it to you, is the reversal bar. I don't need the reversal bar. When you're first learning price bars, you may want to use it. And all it does is, as the bar is building, for example, this is an isolated high, okay, when compared to the previous bar, and then the next bar closed beneath the low of that bar. Okay, that makes this a reversal pattern. Okay, I don't need these little dots. I can already tell that visually because I'm reading the price bars, but for those of you that do need it, we have included it in the indicator. Okay, and let me turn that back off. It draws my attention away from the price bars, and I already know that. That's why I don't like to plot it on there. In fact, I can probably tell you it's a reversal bar before the indicator can, but let's see, what else? That's all. Well, the directional volume indicator I've not gone over yet. The directional indicator, does it come with the TradeStation version? Yes, it does. Okay, the directional volume indicator is one that I designed, and it's based on price action and volume all thrown in together. So in other words, every time I see one of these red bars, I know that price has made a low when compared to the previous bar. Every time I see a blue volume bar, I know that price has made a high when compared to the previous bar. Anytime I see a gray bar, I know that that is an inside bar. In other words, both the high and the low are encompassed within the previous bar. Anytime I see a magenta price bar, volume bar, I know that that is an outside bar, meaning that it exceeded both the high and the low of the previous bar. Now, we do have a zero line, and I'm going to put it on the chart as a horizontal line, so that you can visually see this a little bit better. and I'll make it really big so there's no question about it. Okay, there is your zero line. Okay, now anything that is above this zero line is buyers. Anything below this line are sellers. Does everybody understand that? So now, have you ever found yourself looking at price bars and then you have to hover over because you're not sure if it's really higher or not higher? All you have to do is look at the volume bar and it tells you. Okay, it's kind of hard on the eyes. For example, these over here, are they equal, or is this one tick higher or not higher? And it takes time to do that. So it's incorporated into the volume indicator for just that reason. I was tired of having headaches. But also because if I'm looking, for example, for an outside bar, I know look at magentas. If I need an inside bar to confirm my divergence, okay, look for gray bars. Does everybody understand that? Now, after that, then we can also say, okay, if I'm comparing lows and we're going back to the ATR, okay, so from here all the way back to the ATR, which is here, I want to look at the volume on the lows. Okay, I know between this red arrow and this green arrow, look for red volume bars. Does everybody understand that? So it just made my life a lot simpler to say, okay, from this point to this point, I need to read the red volume bars. Now, in addition to that, in NinjaTrader, we were actually able to also plot the delta. Now, the delta tells you who actually controlled the bar at the end of the bar. Okay, did the sellers win the auction process, or did the buyers win the auction process? Okay, the little hash mark on here tells you who won that process. In this case, the sellers were winning the process. Okay, does everybody understand that? The gray bar is an inside bar. Any other questions so far? And really, if you want to make it simple, what you're looking for, and this is about as simple as I can make it for y'all. If this is retracing back to the ATR, do you have diverging volume? Okay. We don't, well, let's see. Above the green line, the blue bar is buy. We don't do buys and sells. What we plot are buyers and sellers in the volume indicator. Okay? So in this case, for example, as they were coming back to the ATR, there was divergence right on this bar. Okay? So let's say that you entered that. And your entry would have been somewhere around 1936.5. Well, you're setting off of your stop, and the ATR stop is 1935. I like even numbers, so I probably would have put it at 1935. Okay? So you might have lost 2 points on this trade. 2 points on a 12-minute chart is, what, 8 ticks on the ES? That's not a lot of money. In fact, that's your lowest point of risk. Does everybody understand that? Okay, let's get rid of all these dots. Now, the significant part of the ADX, without getting complicated at all, is the magenta histogram bars. Okay? Anytime you have magenta histogram bars, there could be a potential magenta peak. If this line, this red line here, if it gets above 70, which it is on the 180-minute chart is at 71. That tells me that the market on the 180-minute chart is overbought, okay? If it's overbought, what do you expect the market to do? You expect the market to make a magenta peak, and then it will come down to the ATR here, okay? That ATR value is 1928. For that to go down to 1928, it will flip the ATR on the 12-minute chart. It will come back and test this red ATR. Notice this line is blue. This is red. That's exactly the way you want it because it is a counter trend trade. Okay? So if this is telling me a blue line, that means it's an uptrend. I would want to go short off of the 12-minute. The only place to go short off of the 12-minute per our rules is to let this retrace to the ATR. It will be close enough when you see a gray price bar, okay? See how these are gray over here? If they come back to this ATR area and turn gray, you're close enough. You're reading the volume on the highs. If you have diverging volume, that would be an entry to the downside. Now, if it gets back to the ATR, you better take your profits because it very well could bounce from that ATR. And if it does, it's going to stop you out and you're not going to get your profits. Everybody understand that? Claudia, you want me to repeat the last concept? Are you talking about trading this magenta peak if it comes in? Alright, right now this blue line is telling us that the market is trending up. You're at 71. We're expecting a magenta peak and it may come in at the end of this bar at 9 o'clock this morning, okay? If this magenta peak comes in, then it has the potential to come down to the ATR, which is at 1928. Because this is trending up, the only trade that you can take once the magenta peak comes in is to look at the 12-minute. It's already flipped the ATR, okay? It will come back and test that ATR on diverging buying volume. Buying volume means you will be looking at the blue volume bars. They must be decreasing as it is approaching the ATR. Not a problem, Jim. How about taking a long trade on the 12-minute ES now? We have a magenta peak on the 12-minute. Number one, this is more or less a flat peak right now. If anything, it may come back and test this low. The second place, you would go down to a 1-minute chart, okay? And most of you do not have the experience to be trading a 1-minute chart. Now, could you trade a 1-minute chart using the binaries? Yes, you could, because I know your risk is limited on the binaries. Okay. Does everybody understand that? And I'm not being mean when I say most of you don't have the experience. I'm trying to keep you from losing money, guys. Okay? I'm not saying it in a derogatory way at all. I know my traders. And I know how traders are because I'm a trader. And normally a flat dot, they will come back and test the low. That was one of the questions I did on the quiz over the weekend, I think it was. Cute, Ed. Okay, that's the most important aspect of the ADX. So let me go over the top pieces of information that you need to know to begin to trade the ADX. Number one is a non-directional indicator. Blue means moving up, red means moving down, but the red line will still be going up because it's non-directional, okay? Now, If it is over 70 and the line is blue, then you are overbought. If it is over 70 and the line is red, you are oversold. Anytime you make a magenta peak, which means the histogram bars are pink and you have a dot that looks like a pointed top, that is a magenta peak, we expect it to retrace to the ATR. Okay? Will it always do that? No. Sometimes it will not do it because it gets caught by an ATR on a lower time frame. And I'll show you some examples of that today if I come across it. Is today being recorded? Yes, it is. A flat dot is it's flat. It has no peak whatsoever to it, CC. That means that more than likely it will go back and it will test the previous low in this case because the line is red. If this line were blue, then I would expect it to test the top. Okay? Now we have marked the divergence on the ADX indicator. I do not trade that. I might notate it sometimes. Don't really trade it because I would use the volume. Okay? If it has a peak, which is a pointed top like a mountaintop, yes, typically it retraces back to the ATR or close enough to turn the bars gray. Okay? For example, if this had just retraced to 1934, that would have been okay because the bar was gray at that point. Okay? Any other questions on the ADX? When a magenta peak fails, is that an indication to reverse or just to take the stop? There's not an easy answer there, Claudia, because I think it would, really kind of determine the time frames that you're trading. But just to actually stop and reverse, no, because that's not a rule set. I couldn't make that into a rule set. Now, what you can do, typically, let me get up a 1 minute chart, and it's on the ES. So here you have this flat magenta peak coming in, okay? This line is red, correct? So I would want to see the 1 minute flip the ATR, then go back and test the ATR. Don't think about this. This is what caused the peak to come in, okay? Now, as it's approaching this ATR, the volume is increasing, okay? That told you don't take that trade, okay? And what stopped it, literally, it's the 3 minute ATR. Sometimes it will be the congestion dot like it was here, okay? So when you learn to read the charts together, Claudia, oh, it's a 15 minute, no wonder I was crazy. I told it 1 minute, Carlos, it just didn't listen. Okay. Now, this is what caused the magenta peak to form. It comes back to the ATR, okay? Now, in this case, you see that you have divergence right here. Does everybody see that? I mean, it's there, okay? And if you had taken that, you might have lost 4 ticks because you would have entered at 1934.25. Your stop's at wait a minute. Well, your stop's the same as what your entry was, so set 4 ticks off of that, you lost 4 ticks. Okay, but I would have known not to do it because of the formation of the magenta peak itself. It's not a peak. Okay? Now, a lot of times what you will see, do you see this line of congestion dots? Normally what you will what you will see, Claudia, is it will flip the ATR. Now it's going to come back to test the ATR. There's the test of the ATR there. Okay. When it gets back to here, if it does not break through this line of congestion dots with a lot of force, it's not going back to the ATR. Because, and this is the whole theory why I do this, Claudia. All right, they broke through this area of resistance here, right? Now they need to come back and test to make sure that it's going to support price to go up. Okay, all right, they found support. No problem. So now they should bust through this area, but they don't. Not with vengeance, okay? They did it by what, 2 ticks? No, it's 1 tick. I'm sorry. You know, 1 tick is not really busting through this area, okay? And that's the reason sometimes, let me see, I don't see an area on my charts. Well, even here, to me, this would have been valid until, you know, they really were significantly above it, which is now they're going to come back and test the ATR. So, to me, I wouldn't have been looking to enter this uptrend on the 180 until they came back to test the 1928 area. Does that explain it a little bit better for you, Claudia? The congestion zones are actually really nice. And, you know, this morning I don't normally have these up, but I do have the 3-minute, the 12-minute, and the 45-minute market analyzers up. You can see that congestion is highlighted on several of these. For example, the DAX is in congestion on the 45. The Russell's in congestion. The Dow's in congestion. Crude's in congestion on the 12-minute. The NASDAQ's in congestion on the 3-minute. I can tell you how far away we are from any of the ATRs. It's actually a really, really nice market analyzer if you're only trading a few markets. I trade on average about 28 different markets, and it can't handle the 28 markets at one time. Okay, but if you're trading just a few markets, it will handle it. Now, while we're there, well, might as well go ahead and highlight this. All right, did you see how that magenta peak came in? And you wanted to trade it back to the ATR, and I said, no, it's flat. It's going to test that low. What did it do? It tested the low. Now, on the low, buyers actually came in. You had strong divergence there. Oh, good, I can go long. You better not go long. I'm telling you. Okay? You wait until the 1 minute gives you the setup. I don't believe the setup is there yet. Does that answer everybody's question? And it was moving up, and I said, it's going to test the low because it's flat. It does take experience with the ADX to pick up these flat magenta peaks. But once you do, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, let's go over to the market analyzer. Now, all 3 of these are the same, so I'm only going to explain one. The first column is the previous bar trend. So I know crude, the previous bar was red, and the current bar is red. Volume is red, as long volume has to be blue. This tells you that this price bar made a low when compared to the previous bar. The buyers are plotted above zero. The sellers are plotted below zero. The little hash mark tells you that buyers stepped in and controlled that bar. Does that answer your question, Cece? All right, so we have the previous bar and then we have the current bar. So in this case, on the DAX, you're 8 ticks away from the ATR, 11 ticks now, but it was gray. When that was gray, that told me I'm close enough. Okay? So if I wanted to take a trade to the downside and it was gray like it is on the Russell, in that case it's blue, I'm close enough to that ATR to take a position if the trade setup is there. Red and blue do make a difference. It tells me whether it's a high or a low. When you're reading volume divergence, you have to read it on highs and lows. That's the reason it's colored into the volume bar. I can't compare high volume, wait a minute, let me get this out right. I can't compare a price bar that made a high. I cannot compare that volume to a price bar that made a low. It doesn't make sense to compare it that way. If you're going to read volume divergence, you're comparing highs to highs, lows to lows. Inside bars just confirm whether the divergence is there or not. Okay, so we have on the market analyzer, we have the previous bar and then we have current bar. You can see on the Russell now it flipped from being blue to gray and red. Okay, so we went from being a blue trend to now being a red trend. Okay, we can also see on crude you're 17 ticks away from the ATR. On the ES you're 4 ticks away from the ATR. On the DAX, you're 14 ticks, okay? So any of these numbers is just telling me how far away am I from an ATR to take a trade. If you want to trade congestion zones, then you look for anything that's in congestion. For example, the Dow is in congestion on the 45. I wouldn't do it on the 3. I would do it 45 and above. So the Dow's in congestion, the Russell's in congestion, the DAX is in congestion. So if you wanted to take trades based on the congestion areas, you now know all the markets that are in congestion on the 45-minute chart. Everybody understand that? Well, let me get to the market analyzer and we'll go through that, Jim. Okay, now we have the wide bar, and again, that tells us when a price bar exceeds its typical range. Then we have the potential entry indicator, and that means that anytime we are at an ATR or we are at a congestion dot, it tells you there is a potential entry, and it will come up in this column, okay? Blue tick and red tick means long or short. No, I'm a discretionary trader and I don't just go long and short based on colors alone. It takes a lot more to being a trader than that. Okay, now before we start looking at the charts, I just set this meter up today because you can see this morning there was a lot of confusion in the market. Now the NASDAQ is moving down, the ES is moving down, the Dow, the Russell, the DAX is moving down, and gold is kind of flatlining at the moment. One of these will typically stand out, and right now it looks like the DAX is going to actually be the leader. Not the DAX, the NASDAQ. It may be the leader today because it's got the strongest slope on it. And for those that trade forex, this is what we call the currency meter. And of course you can see that the dollar is strong, the Canadian is weak, Aussie is trying to gain some strength. The British pound's trying to gain strength. So is the yen. The euro and the Swiss franc are still weak. Now, in order for you to go, let's say, long on the euro US dollar, you would want the euro to be going up and you would want the dollar to be coming down. Okay? This morning, the dollar was going up and the euro was going down, so that would tell you to short the euro because the euro is weak. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Not unless the euro turns up. And this is not a strong turn on the dollar right now, Jim. Let it develop. It's at the point that it may, but I don't think it's quite there yet. Column blue and blue, red and red. What does that mean? Red, this is the previous price bar. This is the current price bar. So this is telling me the market is moving down. Red means downtrend. Blue means uptrend. So the previous bar was blue. The current bar is blue. Any other questions so far? All right. I'm going to... Oh, I'll leave it up. I'll put it over here, though. I want to expand this window some. Let's go down a little. Yeah. All right. The first thing I'm going to do on the ES is put a line at 1948.50 because that is where the ATR is. And remember, the ATR acts as support or resistance depending on whether it is above price or below price. So that's the first line on my chart. Now, there is also a congestion dot above that at 1955. I'm not going to put that on there. I think it's too far away. Yes, the dollar is the DX, Artemin. All right. Then we have a line of support here at 1928. So I want to put that on my chart. And when we come down to the 45-minute, we have a line of support at 1933.75, which is right there. And they just did divergence there. So it should come back up here, and it should test this ATR at 1936.50. Does everybody see that? Now, if it goes back to that ATR on the 12-minute chart, and it does it on diverging volume, I would be looking for a short position, okay? Provided that I now have a magenta peak that comes in at 9 o'clock this morning. All right, let's go look at, on the 180-minute chart, let's go look at the Dow. And I'm going to pull the 3-minute out of the way. Because these will highlight if you get anything in there, they'll highlight for us. Okay, on the Dow, we do have a magenta peak. Okay, and this, does this look like a pointed top or does it look flat, guys? Yes, it looks like a pointed top. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line here that represents the ATR. Well, if you look at this, then you have to come down, right? It goes up and then it comes down. This one, if you look, you go up and then straight out. That's flat. Y'all know I just love to draw. I'm such a great artist here. I'm going to draw it for you. Okay? So you have a line going up. Alright? Now, this is the key. Does it come down? Okay? So it goes up and then comes down. That's going to be a peak. But if it does even this number, that's more flat to me. There's no slope there to that, guys. Do y'all understand that now? Yeah, you should see my stick figures, Ed. They're awesome. It's the only way I can draw them is on the computer. Okay. So we've got the 16,649 inserted on the chart now. That's the ATR from the 1440. We also have 698. It's going to get to the ATR here first, so that's the only one I'm going to pay attention to today. Below price, we have 16,486. So we're going to mark that on the chart. It doesn't have to be exact as long as you're very close to the area. Then we also have 16,510. And up above us we have 16,550. Okay, so my expectation would be if we get the magenta peak at 9 o'clock this morning on the 180-minute chart, it will go up and test the ATR on the 12-minute to the downside. You will take a short. Otherwise, you would be going long because this is at a congestion dot on the 45-minute. So the next question is, as this approached this congestion dot, was it on diverging volume? Okay? This has made a new low, and as it stands right now, it is diverging volume, but that bar does not finish for another 8 minutes. Okay? Now, since this does not finish for another 8 minutes, and you've virtually got no volume there, more than likely it is going to bounce up to test this ATR. What will stop it from testing the ATR on the 45-minute chart? It will be the ATR that is here on the 12-minute chart, which is currently at 538. Does everybody understand what I just said? How do I trade that information? That's a good question, actually, Jim. All right. It's testing this area here. It's doing it on diverging volume. Okay, now that doesn't end until 9 o'clock. Okay. As it stands right now, it should go back and it should test this area here, which is 550. Okay. In order to do that, it's going to have to clear the ATR over here at 538. So this is sort of a reverse of what we normally do. Okay? So if you enter this, how much profit potential do you have before you get to an area that it's going to test? 10 ticks? Now, that would be your potential profit right now is 10 ticks. It's not tradable. Do you see that now, Jim? Right. It's too many lines. There's too many things in the way of a good trade. Okay? If there's too many things in the way of a good trade, move on to a new market. In hindsight, okay, that may blow all the way and come up here, okay? That's hindsight trading. It will struggle with these lines before it happens, okay? And you don't want the losses that you're going to incur while it's struggling through these lines. Yeah, it's too choppy. Right. Well, that's usually what's going to happen, actually, James. These are areas where you could actually take like an out-of-the-money binary for a really, really low rate. You know, if you really think, you know, you could potentially make something there, you know, say you could get a binary at 540 for 25 bucks. If you really won't believe that it's going to go up, take the binary instead. You won't get hurt off of 25 bucks. You know, it's per contract, and at least you have the potential of making 75. Whereas if this went down real suddenly, you would get hurt. Do you understand that? And I don't have the binaries open because I've got the market analyzer open, or I would show you. Okay? Alright, so let's go over and now look at the NASDAQ. Now, on the NASDAQ, we still have, and is this flat or is that a magenta peak, guys? I think that one's kind of evident there, but just a little practice exercise for y'all. Yes, it is a peak. It looks just like a pointed top. So the first thing we're going to do is actually put the, wrong line here. We're going to put the horizontal line for the ATR on the chart. And I'm going to put it there. 39.50 is above that, so I'm not going to worry about that one. Then we have support potentially at 38.93. And we have support coming off of the 45 minute at 39.07. Okay, so I would expect this at least to go back to this ATR. We are overbought over here on this 180 minute chart. So this is one I would be anticipating a retracement on. You do not take that, okay, unless that magenta peak comes in. Don't go against the trend until you get your magenta peaks. Am I recording this session today? Yes, I am. Any questions on the NASDAQ? All right, let's go look at the Russell. Now the Russell has already actually tested the ATR once. It's bouncing down off of it now. I would still put the value, which is currently at 1144.8 on my chart. We also have 1148.9 on the 720, which is also significant. And it's close enough that I would want to put that one on my chart. Okay, we have support for price at 1133. And we have a row of congestion dots at 1135. Okay, so as it stands right now, you've got two areas of support below price. You've got two areas of resistance above price. It could bounce to the upside because it's almost at the ATR as it stands right now. Then again, if it breaks these two areas, I would be looking to go short, period, end of discussion. Because the next area that's going to actually serve as support is 1112.5 as it stands right now. And that's going to move up. Remember that. Okay? There. So if it makes it through these two lines, then look, there's nothing in the way of a good trade. You can put them on any time frame you want, whether it's the 12-minute, the 3-minute, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. As long as, you know, I like them on my trading chart, Jim, because the purpose of the lines is to always make you aware it's coming into support or it's coming up to resistance. So it's whichever time frame works for you. Now, from all of the indices that we looked at today so far, my preference would probably be the Russell. Why? Why do I feel like 1112 will be support? We broke through on 7/29 and August 4th because that's the ATR value right here. The ATRs will always pick up the important numbers, Jay, because it's based on price. So yeah, and it won't do it, you know, in one move. It'll go down and it will come back and test this area to make sure it acts as resistance, and then it will come down. You want me to predict the market, Christian? It is the path of least resistance. Typically what you're going to see, if you come down to the 3-minute chart, guys, okay, you just had a wide bar down. What do wide bars do? They typically retrace. This is going to go up. It's going to have magenta in there. You will come back and you will test the ATR, and then at that point you can actually enter.